Thanks for attending this. Very long title, but I'm mostly going to be talking about RevOps, not necessarily from a tooling or process perspective, but from a culture perspective and the very much needed efforts it takes to align marketing and sales, which I see as a key function of my role. Okay, so I'll start by introducing myself. I've been working in tech for a pretty long time, 15 years, and I've been working in revenue operations for over 10 years now, starting in marketing operations, but very soon this expanded into CRM management, sales operations, business operations, and analytics, which is actually what drew me to work in marketing in the first place. I've been at Scaleway for almost a year, and at Scaleway, I am the VP of Revenue Operations, and what that means there is that I actually manage the sales ops, MarOps, BizOps, revenue enablement, sales administration, which is an often overlooked part of sales, and analytics. I started with a team of 4 people, which has grown into a team now of 10 people, soon to be 13. I'm recruiting, if you know anyone. So the function at Scaleway has grown as the sales team has grown, not just in size, but also in focus, as we're currently really switching 100% to a sales-led strategy. So if you don't know who Scaleway is, we are actually a sponsor at this event. Our booth is right over there. Come and see us. We're a European cloud provider. I can't speak very much to this. I tend to have blinders on when it comes to my function. That means I'm not the best person to talk about product. So I wanted to start with this quote. Alignment, not about everyone thinking the same way, but everyone being on the same page. This is a quote from actually somebody who works in HR. And usually when you talk about culture, you have the chief culture officer. It's usually in line with the chief people officer. It's not really to do with marketing culture or sales culture. In fact, sales culture kind of has a negative connotation in a lot of organizations. I bet you're visualizing a bell or a gong. I don't know if any of you have this in your sales room. We do. But what I really wanted to talk about is that I see myself and my team as really the architects of sales and marketing alignment and fostering that culture within the organization. We focus on a lot more than just setting up some tools, some processes, and implementation. We actually, and that's what I've asked all of my teams to do for a long time, is focusing on communication and making sure that the tools are not just set up, that the process don't just exist, but that people are aware of it, that they are used, that they're understood, and that they're iterated upon. And so that is what I see as the backbone of revenue operations and the backbone of a structure for good marketing and sales alignment. So I'll focus on 3 topics: transparency, collaboration, and accountability. And starting with transparency, I wanted to start with this image. So building in construction. It's my favorite metaphor for what actually revenue organizations do. Earlier on, there was a panel talk that mentioned RevOps, that mentioned alignment, and one of the speakers talked about the funnel. Probably everyone in this room is familiar with the sales and marketing funnel. His image was he flipped it on the side, expanded it, it became a bow tie, etc. I'd much rather talk about the building, because what's happened to me time and time again is either when I join a new company, a new organization, or when I have been able to do some consulting at other organizations in the past, What usually happens, the stage where they're at, is they already have a marketing team, small or big, a sales team. They've had some success in revenue. That success has led them to raise several times. Some of them are relatively mature organizations, such as Scaleway. And what inevitably happens is that you look at the building, and what I'm told is like, sure, we have stairs, and we have an elevator, they're built. And I'm like, okay, so how many people can go from the ground floor to the top floor? The top floor being opportunities being signed and won. We're not sure. We can tell you who goes from the ground floor to the third floor. And then they have to take the stairs to go from the third to the fifth. There's no stairs from the third to the fourth. We're actually not quite sure how to get to the fourth floor. And then you'll speak to growth marketers or growth hackers, and what they'll tell you is, we've actually built our own set of stairs. It's on the side of the building. All right, and how much revenue that generated? I don't know. I can tell you how many leads is generated. You see where I'm going with that, I think. I see my role as a bit of an architect, a bit of an engineer, and mostly a team builder that will look at the building holistically and quite often say, okay, you do need people to go from the ground floor to the top floor. Let's say the rooftop bar is probably where the customers are, and they're enjoying a drink since they're customers. And how many of them can go, how many of them reach each of the floors. Once they reach the top floor, they go in different offices to go to your different markets. It's important that I know that this is available, but that the whole organization knows it's available, that the whole organization can tell you how to get to the lifts, how to get to the stairs, who they're sending where, and how. So this is relatively simple. It's possible that these are all things that if you work in sales, marketing, or in operations, you've looked at before. I'm only highlighting them because it's kind of a checklist, and the way I see it, it's a checklist worth reviewing over and over again continuously. So the first one is that you need to design a unified funnel. Unified funnel means marketing all the way to customer, all the way to long-term customer with renewed opportunities, etc. It's important that you model all of that and that the whole organization is aware of it and is aware of each of the stages and agrees on the importance of each of the stages. So for example, if your funnel includes leads that aren't yet known, that are anonymous, that we have some form of awareness of this at the sales level. And then that you build each of the steps, and that you build each of the steps in a system that everyone in the organization is able to access. Usually, this is the CRM. And usually what that means is that, practically speaking, all of the marketing activities will need to get into that system and be measured in some way, and a way that allows you to measure at each of the steps. So, from lead to prospect to opportunity to customer. Oh. And what that means when I mean building the steps is that you have the first stage, then you have a selection stage, whether automated or manual when it comes to your sales teams, another conversion stage, another selection stage, another conversion stage. And this is where the work of the revenue operations team is a little boring, but it's not necessary. When I speak to sales leaders, when I speak to marketing leaders, they're often very focused on the big wins, the big events, the big contracts. But it's really the day-to-day work that will allow your organization to continue grinding and allow it to scale. So in terms of those stages, the selection, the conversion, you measure the volume, you measure the conversion rate, and you measure the velocity. Then, And this is where usually myself and my team take more of a project manager, stakeholder involvement role, is that you have to define every role. So everybody that touches this, whether they're entering leads in the system, whether they are creating the system or have input into the system that automatically scores these leads, whether they are the people selecting it, their role needs to be defined. And why that's important is because very often marketing teams, sure, sales teams too, they work in silos. And the way to avoid these silos is make sure that everybody is on a line on where your work begins and where your work ends. This also ensures that you have some view into how this works within the continuity of the organization, where your work is coming from and where your work is going. And then, thanks to all of the stages that you've modeled, you also know where your work is going all the way through the funnel. Then you create a process for each step. Of course, revenue ops does not create this process independently, but it's often created for the different roles and the different stakeholders. Again, this is where you have to spend a lot more time talking to people. You could call it a workshop, you could call it a brainstorm, but making sure that you're communicating, that everyone is aligned, and that everything that you're doing is documented. And this will allow you to provide a holistic journey for all of the team members, but also for all of your customers. All right, so now that you've built the steps, you need to make sure that all the steps are connected. So, technically speaking, on the back end, revenue operations, again, whether it's marketing operations or sales operations, we have to put in the automation steps that ensure a smooth handoff. Again, this is paired with all of the process documenting and all of the process building that you have created beforehand to make sure that you're not just providing, say, a list of qualified prospects to a sales team, but that they know where they're coming from, that they have the right information to be able to process them, that the information is up to date. This is where you're also able to allow everyone to be aligned on messaging. Why? Because our team plays a huge part in the way the data is structured. And through data structure, you're able to segment your audience. So again, making sure if the audience is segmented, if the data is enriched in the proper way, that every team sees the right prospect and that they are able to provide the right message for the right prospect. So again, it's like a conduit for all of the work of the product marketing team, the content team, the demand generation team, to have their work continuously transmitted throughout the funnel all the way to sales. And again, I have to insist on this. This is where revenue operations has to communicate and as an essential part of our role has to facilitate communication within all of these teams. I spend probably 50% of my week in meetings where, sure, I'm able to consult and say, oh, we could provide this solution, we could provide that solution. But I see my role as a person that connects the dots, including explaining what the campaigns mean. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I was speaking to somebody who creates landing pages. They create dedicated landing pages for certain types of campaigns. And I guess the very provocative question I asked them was, well, what happens to these leads? And their answer was, I don't know. So there was a big lead generation effort that had been created. It had been created in partnership with sales because these landing pages had been created for the sales teams. However, that person had no clue what happens to all of their leads. So again, this is where we have to jump in and provide them with the right information. Maybe they weren't aware where the information was. Maybe they weren't aware of all the processes. But this is where we're able to intervene. And finally, what is all this structure for? What is all this process and communication for? Is creating accountability through common KPIs. So as I mentioned, I'm also manage revenue analytics for Scaleway and at Scaleway. And so one of the things that I have found is more efficient in making sure that the teams are aligned is that they have common metrics. Now, of course, there will be different KPIs for different roles at each stage of the funnel. The marketers will be focused on volume and some conversion metrics. The conversion metrics will be different according to the channel. If it's an event, it's how many people registered, how many qualified leads registered. If it's a landing page, it's how many people filled the form, etc., etc. But if you manage to find a common metric that works with the whole organization, then you're making sure that the whole of the revenue organization is aligned. So it's not just a case of having a revenue organization that's in theory, marketing and sales working together, but you're actually all working together with the same context in mind and with the same goal in mind. So one of the ways to do that is identify the gaps. We created all these stages, we're measuring all of these stages, ideally they're on the dashboard. What do you do with that? Well, you find out where is it that maybe you have some deficiency. So one of the things that we realized recently is that we probably needed to lengthen the length of the contracts. So that's a key metric that's now part of the marketing and sales organization. And we're allowed to see that we are not just committing customers over a certain amount, but over a certain period of time, guaranteeing the revenue for a longer period of time. I wanted to speak very quickly, I don't have that much time left, about one example. It's something that I very much like because it's relatively simple. That I implemented at my previous company, Aptio, and that I am implementing currently at Scaleway, and it's the exit pipeline targets. Now, I have no idea if all of you work in operations, in sales, or in marketing, but probably a lot of you have pipeline targets, pipeline metrics implemented already. The idea here is that the pipeline targets are first of all calculated, and they're calculated with a view of the future. So it's not just about the revenue that was generated this month or this quarter. It is about the revenue that you will need to attain your goals throughout the year. So how this is done, you take all of the data, you create targets at every stage. This allows each of the team to have a specific view of what their accountability is towards the overall revenue target. And then you create exit pipeline targets at the end of the quarter. So this means how big is your pipeline supposed to be once you've deducted all of the wins, all of the losses too, and added all of the opportunities that were created this quarter or in previous quarters. And then you have to work with all of leadership, all of marketing leadership, all of sales leadership to make sure that everybody is measured in that way. Of course, revenue is a common target for all. The reason why I like exit pipeline targets is that at some point, some teams start losing interest. There's some finger pointing, whether opportunities are converted or not. Marketing can be blamed for lack of volume. Sales can be blamed for their lack of conversion. The pipeline is really something that everybody is accountable for and directly responsible for in revenue.
I'd like to speak to you about customer success.
So this is something that we're implementing currently.
Scaling.
That's it.
Speaking about early stage, but